Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, so now we finally have it going. Hopefully, let's see if it does it. Alright, good, 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 good. Okay, so finally we're back to all this. Trying to hurry up and finish this tier list because, well, I made it in 3 parts, might as well finish it with the third part. Gangrel's still in F tier. I have no idea the reason why it keeps changing him back to the neutral position. I don't know, maybe they don't like it. I put him in F tier, maybe F tier is only honorary position, but I don't know. Anyways, I know I forgot this because this is the problem with me doing things off script and never having a script to work with. We are going to put Cordelia in A tier, even though she joined like before. Let's see, she joined her a good portion. Yeah. Cordelia, A tier easily because I feel like she's a very well-rounded character, or I should say unit. The only problem is like a lot of her initial kind of idea and support kind of revolves around Crom, even though she cannot support him. Now, the whole reason I believe why, I think I want to say officially, is due to the fact that Crom, like if you see concept art, I believe, Cordelia, I believe, was going to be like another sister to Crom, and that's why she can't support him. I'm not entirely sure if that's the true case. I could be wrong. I could be right. I don't know. I guess I just remember hearing something about that like years ago when the game was first coming out and doing all that. But in terms of unit, she has Gale Force, so that automatically makes her good. She does not have. She has an offensive skill in Soul, and so that's good enough. She has access to Arm Drift, a few different types of breakers. I believe she has Bow Breaker because she become a Bow Knight, so that way she can alleviate her weakness to bows in a way. It's by making sure that they can't hit her, even though that's pretty much null and void on Lunatic Plus and Lunatic mode because enemies will have Hawkeye, so they'll never miss. So so better. So I still think she's A tier because I like her using her as a unit. She has very well-rounded stats. Sure, offensively, like terms of she's stronger than I believe Sumiya. Not as fast. I think she has a tiny bit more defense. So you can compare these two because I believe these are one of the only two natural Pegasus Knights you can get in the game, if not counting second generation in terms of like who you pair off and all that. But overall, yeah, A tier easily. Moving on. Now, let me check to see if I haven't missed anyone else. No? Good. Now, here's technically the only other character. This is the only second generation unit that you are required to have because she's mainly part of the story. That being Lucina. Lucina's S tier. Here's the thing. She's always going to be part of your unit deployment because it doesn't matter who Crom marries. Crom can marry female Robin, Olivia, Sumiya, and Sully, and Maribel. If he does not marry off one of these four, he will just marry a generic unit, a generic villager unit to get Lucina. And thus Lucina will only have access to a certain set of skills, and thus she would be like, she'd be down in like probably B tier or even A tier. But due to the way that she's written, how useful she is, how integral is she to the story, I feel like she's S tier easily. She'll always get access to either because she is a unique class, being that she is the female version of Great Lord. Because yes, there's two different versions, being male version that Crom gets, and female version that's exclusive to Lucina. And she also gets another skill being the Rightful King, where she can activate skills more often, and depending on who you pair her up with, she either get no offensive skills, and in case of like Maribel. Well, actually, no, she'll always have access to, I believe at least two, because Crom can become like a Great Knight. So she'll have access to like Luna and Ether. But if she marries off Sumiya, she gets, or Maribel, she gets a lot more support skills. Sully, she has like the same skill set as Crom, so there's really no point in doing it. Olivia, I believe she gets access to like Swordmaster. So if you want more of offensive Lucina, you probably pair up with Olivia. If you want to go more like a cannon couple, do it for Crom and Sumiya. And these two are more like, do you want like a support Lucina, or do you want a Lucina that kind of does nothing? No, that'd be if like Crom married a generic unit. But yeah. And she also gets she gets two special cutscenes depending on how you play out with Robin. Well, there's three versions. You have one where they're just allies. You have one where male Robin's married to her. Yeah, I know. Weird. And you have one where female Robin's her mother. So she has like 3 unique scenes for each of these units at a certain point in the game, and you can see those scenes, and they are pretty heart wrenching. Well, at least if they're in like a quote unquote established relationship with married and parent and child, and she feels heartache when doing it. But when you're just allies, he's like, you need to die. Okay. Moving on to our next set of units. I'm not going to go in any particular order. I'll just go in the order that they're presented in, I guess, because it really doesn't matter. Because you can recruit these characters at any point in time, or at least a second gen. Actually, no. We'll go on to 1.5, because we have 2 more 1.5 units being Sayri. Sayri is B tier. I honestly don't find anything wrong with her. She joins as a pre-promoted unit. She joins as a sword master, so she'll already have. I believe she'll already have access to like Astra, depending on level, depending on what version you're playing on, being easy, normal, or easy, hard, normal, hard, lunatic, or lunatic plus. It depends really. She has access to Astra, and she does have access to Gale Force, but it does seem a bit harder to get her to be a Dark Flyer. Excuse me, but that's mainly due to her being a pre-promoted unit already. Overall, she's good. The only problem is she has only like 3 supports. Tiki, male and female Robin, but I'll count them as one, and then one and female Morgan, if you marry her off to Robin. So overall, I think she's good, but she has so little background with some of these other characters, and you really don't get a whole lot insight into her character unless you buy some of the DLC, where she can talk with some of the other characters, but it's mainly just typical support partners. Alright, and then we have Tiki. Tiki being probably S tier again. Well, I can think of, 4 reasons why. But, being the fact that Tiki is already an established character who was in the first game, and then years later comes back in what's supposed to be the final game, even makes reference to Lucina. She has a few different supports, so she's not limited just to, like some of the... She's only limited to, I believe, first gen being Robin, but she can talk to Lucina, and I believe Na. Where is she? Na, but that's only if you're able to marry off Noe. So she does have a few different supports. Oh, and Anna, what am I talking about? But she has a few different supports. One's kind of funny. She's kind of, in a sense, mellowed out even more. She's also very sleepy a lot of the time, because I believe in the support with female Robin, she's asleep, and she calls Robin an old hag in their final A support. Because Robin was just trying to figure out stuff from her while she was asleep, which is funny. When she sees Lucina, she compares her to Marth, because she took his name. She also looked like him, so I believe in the game as well, they have the same stance, even though they're from different classes. So overall, I think she has no offensive skills, I believe, unfortunately, but I think it's because of her character and the way that she's kind of progressed over the years to where she's kind of like, alright, finally time to put her down. And if you look at DLC, she actually becomes like quote-unquote Naga, or Naga becomes like a title, and she becomes like the new Naga. But that's with DLC, and most of the time you're not going to play it, or you're not going to have access to it because you don't care anymore. Alright, now we're going to finally move into moving up the characters from second generation. Brady, he's C tier, not because he's a bad character. I think it's because his unit class options are kind of limited depending on who you pair him up with. Yeah, he can get access to Gale Force, but his Paralog quest is pretty difficult because he joins as a healer, and he'll stay away. He has like this tough guy attitude. He's obviously he's a big softy. I believe you could do like a support with like Inigo, where Inigo complains like, how the heck is someone like Brady able to get around with girls, because he's like a big old softy despite the fact he has a scar on his eye from doing violin practice. The reason why he's in C tier is because he joins late and that he's a healer. Even though if you kind of play your cards right and you don't get anyone killed, Maribel will be your healer, Ricken can be a healer, Lissa will be a healer, Muriel can be a healer. You have access to 4 different, you probably have access to 4 different healers if you keep them well within their lane. And Brady, even though he joins late and can pretty much promote right out the gate, it doesn't really help his case, even though I personally do like him. But yeah, I do like him a bit more than, either any of these characters. So yeah, I'll put him like middle B tier. or in middle C tier, because like I do like him more than Saul. I like him more than all the characters because of his that he wants to act tough, but he's a big old softy. He also kind of accepts the fact that people he was healing, I believe, would turn into Risen when they brought him back. So unfortunately, he kind of knows how to deal with that. Granted, though, you only hear that through DLC, and I do like his supports. And he actually acts Robin like a boss, like a gang. Cynthia. Personally, I would put her in S tier because I kind of like her like heroic nature and everything. Because I feel like this game doesn't have like enough like no. I will put her in A tier because her whole heroic thing is kind of one note. Is that it comes into play with a lot of her supports. You can even see it with another character we'll have on here, Severa, and I believe Owain, because they'll form like their own little like justice club. And her attitude kind of grates on a few other characters. She annoys Nod a little bit. She really annoys Severa, even though they are friends. But then again, Severa's a tsundere, so that's probably the problem. Personally, I like using her a lot, but since I pair Samia up a Crom, she gets access to Gale Force, Ether. She won't have access to Rightful King because she'll start off as a Pegasus Knight, and she won't get access to Great Lord like Lucina, who will be her sister in this case. So overall, I like her. Character's alright. I have no problems with her. That's what if I was gonna count heroes and supplemental material, then yeah, she'd be S tier. But since I'm not, I'm only really mentioning like DLC and all that. She will be sitting comfortably in like the upper A tier. Jerome, I like Jerome. He's essentially the Batman of this game. Batman in a sense, if he was a bit more chill and a bit more cold at the same time. He at first he's going to release his Wyvern because he joins as a Wyvern rider is Cherche's Minerva, except it's more of a battle hardened Minerva if you want to get that. And he plans on releasing her in a time because guess what? From the future, all the Wyverns are dead pretty much, except for all the ones that the Risen use, which I'm also a presumably dead Risen. So he's kind of cold and standoffish to pretty much everyone, including his own father, in this case, Vake, because I always pair up Vake with Cherche. And even though he grows to be okay with them, he's always kind of standoffish. But due to his power and versatility as a unit, I always feel like he's pretty comfortably sitting in A tier. And if you pair him up with female Robin, who has a strength boon, you could give birth to like one of the strongest units in the entire game, who can dish out like the most damage ever. It's kind of ridiculous. Alright, moving on to Inigo. Inigo's not in C tier. Why would he ever be in C tier? Inigo's another one sitting in A tier, S tier. Because I personally do like the way Inigo is. Yeah, he's a flirt, and I don't like that because that can get kind of annoying. But the thing is, he fails so hard and constantly that it's kind of sad and pathetic, but also hilarious at the same time. Because he'll go out with Jerome, someone who's standoffish and doesn't like to show its face. I also should have mentioned Jerome has a funny interaction with Nah, but we'll get there. But like he tries to go on Jerome like, Jerome, you'll be my wingman. Everyone will be so scared of you that they'll flock towards me. And then it fails because Jerome just outright surpasses him. And then if he does the same with Brady, and then Brady outright surpasses him. So it's kind of funny. The fact that he just like constantly fails at every single relationship that he tries except for a dedicated support partner is always kind of funny to me. But it's the idea that he also never gives up and he keeps trying. Inigo is also one of the children who, in addition to Brady, I should have mentioned, can be one of Crom's children. They don't get access to Ether though. They get access to Rightful King, which is good, but I would also think is worse. Depending on who you pair Olivia up with, he can still have access to Gale Force, but his class options can be kind of limited. In this case, since it's Vivarian, I use for an example, he can primarily be like he has access to all the variants like subclasses and all that, but he's not really good as a magic user in my opinion, unless you juice him up with like every single like magic item you can get. But that's entirely up to you. I personally like Inigo very much. I like his character. I like the way he's built, maybe because of Gale Force. But he's also just kind of fun around. And if I count everything else, he does appear in the Fates, but under a different name. And then he fails again with his whole romance thing. So I feel like the supplemental material keeps making Inigo stay in S tier rather than dropping down to one of the bottom tiers. Kajil. Kajil, unfortunately, is probably bottom C tier. It's not. Her character is kind of annoying. Uh, Strength rules all, kind of that. She has that kind of support with Lucina. She apparently does not like weaklings all that much because if they're not siblings, because you can like do the whole Sully thing and marry her off the Krom. Thus, Kajil will be sisters with Lucina. Um, if you marry her off, it actually makes her look worse because then she doesn't have like the whole might makes right type of mentality, but she gets scared of like really like bugs. Granted, bugs are disgusting and huge. In this case, Fire Emblem, they're giant bugs. They get kind of like strange mixed vibes, and she's like, oh, she respects what Robin, Krom, Lucina, and a few other characters in the army, though they're not named. But she's just like, oh, I should stay with the strongest, and that kind of personality, that was like one of the first supports I saw, so it kind of ticked me off when I first saw it. She obviously respects her mother very much, and her father, depending on who you do in this case. In this case, where is he? I picked Henry to be her father. It's kind of strange, but in the support I was mentioning earlier with Sully, like, yeah, she's also a bad cook. Overall, she's not that bad. It's just like I don't have her used all that often to the point where I can say, yeah, she's good. But for her starting off as general, like, oh yeah, she has very good defenses and all that, but her movement's super slow unless you're hacking the game like I do from time to time, and thus she kind of can be left behind unless you pair up with another far-moving unit, in this case like Sully, or maybe Henry if you make him a Dark Knight. Because you want to pair, in this game you always want to pair up your support partners with one another, with someone that can support with, and not someone random. Like, you don't pair up Krom and Lonku unless you're deliberately trying to buff Lonku's stats with Krom's like support bonuses. But overall, yeah, she's fine. You can do the Vantage, Wrath, Vengeance combo with her. But personally, it takes a lot of effort to do that, and in order for her to really go, you do need to go through a couple different classes. And I do professionally, like, I would probably have to make her a Sword Master just so she can have more Void and dodge better. I'd rather do dodge tanking than physical tanking. Like, as long as I don't get hit, I'd rather have that than being hit all the time and taking damage. Okay, Laurent. Laurent's another character who's unfortunately going to be in C tier. I don't hate him, it's just like I don't have access to him a lot. Because he's just a Kabukarpi and Muriel, in a sense, but a bit nicer in a way. So, you know what? Here. Yeah, he'll be put in like B tier, but bottom B tier, because I like him. Like I said, I like most of these characters, with the exception of like maybe two. But yeah, Laurent's just everything you could say about Muriel, you could probably copy onto Laurent, except Laurent's probably nicer and a bit more direct with his approach. And he's also, technically, he has like this weird kink where he likes to be yelled at. So look up the Noir support for that. It is funny, but it's also kind of weird. So that's also kind of like showing off me. But hey, no games in here. Again, as a unit wise, I paired him up with Rickon and Muriel if I don't personally go for Muriel with the magic user. In this case, he just hits very, very hard on the magic side, but his defenses are garbage. So unless you're like hacking the game or you're trying to shift him around to have a bit more bulk in some other classes or give him some unique skills so that way he can stay alive, like Light Tape or Counter and like Vengeance and all that stuff that can help him stay alive. But overall, yeah, not much to say about Laurent or how you ever pronounce his name. Overall, I think he's okay. Morgan. Both Morgans. Male Morgan's gonna sit in C tier because I've never used him. I have never ever used male Morgan, that's why he's kind of sitting in C tier. He's perfectly fine, he's gonna be like right in the middle. I have like no opinion of him other than apparently he's like sweet pea and like he's like perfectly innocent and he wants to train to get better. Now female Morgan, since I play as male Morgan, since I play as male Robin, I always get female Morgan. Female Morgan's, since I have more exposure to her, she's an S tier mainly because she's hilarious. Hilarious in a way that's obviously invasive because she wants to be like her father, but she can't beat her, so he still remembers her. They're kind of the same position, lost in time, they had no idea who it was. Then, obviously, when you go to the ruins and find her, you also get access to one of the best buff items in the game, being, I believe, Naga's Tear,
where increase your health by 5 and every stat by 2, which, yeah, that's amazing. And since she is the tactician's child, they have access to every class in the game except obviously the like gender lock classes. She get access to some unique skills. If you marry Robin off to Lucina, hey, Lucina gets Morgan gets Ether. You marry her off to Aversa, she gets Shadow Gift. Pan, Togwell. Noe, Maneki. Tiki, Maneki. She has access to so many different skills and so many different combinations. I believe you could make her a route. You could do almost anything with her, and she would still be good. Is the thing, and that's why she's an S tier. She's essentially a better tactician. She's a better unit than your Robin because Robin will always be better. Well, Robin's like the best unit in the game because he has access. They have access to so many different combinations of skills. They can make him OP. But Morgan's better because they have better stats and overall, and thus they are a better unit. Alright, moving on to Na. Na's another. Actually, you know what? Hold up. We'll wait on Na. She's not an F tier. Don't get me wrong. Put her back down here. Na. I should guess I should go into supports for Morgan. Again, I haven't seen most male Morgan. Male Morgan apparently, like I say, is a sweetie. He's nice. Everyone gets stronger, wants to be like his mother. And the same can be said for female Morgan, but she's taking a bit more of a hilarious route. It's slightly more torturous and invasive. She wants to see what's behind Jerome's mask, so she and Na both constantly try to get it off, and then the friend was like, oh wow, he's very, very attractive, because, yeah, the dude is. Like, he is, I'm not gonna lie. And then you're like, oh wow, like, holy cow. But in this case, it's a bit more. She kind of plays along with Inigo. She's kind of just nice to everyone. Even, like, obvious exceptions, like the Tsundere Severat, she's still nice to them. And then, well, I guess in the case with Yarne, or Yarn, how you pronounce his name, she also is kind of invasive because she wants to mess around with his ears, and since they're Togwell and their ears are sensitive, yeah, that's kind of the problem. Moving on to Na. Na, I think, comfortably sits alongside her mother, because she's just a better Noe in a sense. She got better tanking, she'll have access to more offensive skills, and she is another Maneki, so obviously she's always going to be powerful. Now, depending on who you pair her up with, always comes into play. Since I pair up Noe with Longku, she's obviously a little bit faster. She's still rather tanky. She hits slightly harder. So overall, she could be seen as a direct comparison because they're both Manekins. So you have, if you play your cards right, you can have access to 3 or 4, depending on who you pair up with. And yeah, it's just amazing overall. Personality-wise, she's kind of sitting alongside Nae because she's basically the opposite of her, in the sense that she does not see the priority of playtime. She wants to be taken seriously because she was dropped off with an adoptive family, and then during Parents in the War, their parents never came back, most likely died. You get the deal. Future sucks for all the future children. Not learned not to question anything. It just took everything in stride. And apparently, if you do support Robin, she knows how to eat everything, like literally almost everything. She'll eat the roots. She'll eat the leaves. I think she'll eat the branches for some things. And Robin's like, "Oh my goodness, what the heck have you been eating in the future?" And she learned basically not to complain about it, mainly because, well, she's in the army, not a lot of food, and her adopted family kind of sucked. Yeah, you feel sorry for her, but she's also kind of bratish in a way. When she's very, very determined, again with Jerome, when she wants to see his fast, she chases after him. In a way, she threatens to eat Inigo if he goes off hitting on more girls, if you decide to marry them off together. But it is kind of funny, but also horrifying, because she actually just threatens to straight up eat someone, whereas Noe always just kind of plays around with other people. And depending on who her father is, she'll always ask questions like, why the heck are you interested in Mom? Why did you marry her? Like, is it because you're interested in people like her? Or is it because, and then they tell her to shut up, but you can kind of get the reason why. They can't say that all the way, but you can kind of understand, like, the whole dynamic on the whole question she was asking. So yeah, because of her eccentric personality in some cases, that seems like a straight conflict with her other character traits, I feel like putting her in B tier is perfectly fine along with everyone else. Noir. Noir is A tier. Personality-wise, she's a soft-spoken girl who's the daughter of Tharja, who was experimented on as a kid, and does not like to speak her mind on a whole lot of things. She's apparently very thin and very frail, and she says she can be knocked over by a hard breeze if she's not fully set right. But she also has a second side to her personality, the fact that she's kind of crazy, mainly due to all the experiments and the fact that Tharja gave her a charm that allows her to basically be more assertive, but also way more violent. Because she will scream in all caps, say a signature phrase of blood and thunder, and usually threaten the character in some way. Like for example, she also gets no Tharja's like stalker's tendencies if you pair her up with Inigo, because she basically like clings onto Inigo, tells him not going to talk to other girls, and threatens to like hurt him or hurt the girls. Granted, yeah, they fall in love together, but at the end of the day, but it's also kind of funny. Overall, she can become a very effective mage. I don't keep her as an archer, in all honesty. You gotta say if you pair Tharja up with Libra, pretty high magic attack, and then she'll have decent defense and res, mainly because of Libra being a balanced class, being in the War Monk. Or in case of Robin, second Morgan. Basically, if Robin marries off to anyone, you have a second Morgan, in a sense. But overall, yeah, I do like Noir. I don't use her on much, unfortunately, because her chapter is pretty hard to try and complete. And I should also mention, like, for any of these characters, like the second generation, you usually want to have Crom or their parent. In this case, if the parent dies, you'll have Crom, but usually having the daughter talk to them, or the mother talk to the characters, tends to snap them out of it. Even though Jerome is still kind of an ass, he'll still help you at the end of the day. Noir, I think Tharja, at the end of the chapter, actually does, and support with her, does find out the reason. They do kind of become like a genuine family, even though it's obvious like their family dynamic isn't the best in a way. Tharja's crazy, she's crazy, and depending on who you marry them off to, they're probably crazy. Well, except for Libra in this case. Libra ain't crazy. Moving on. Wayne, S tier. Wayne's easily S tier character. Uh, he is, in this case, the best split of Inigo. It feels wrong not to put him in the S tier. This is also due to supplemental material and personality-wise in the game. Wayne's always going to be very good, being the daughter of Lissa. Being son of Lissa. He'll have access to Gale Force because Lissa has it if you go out of your way to try to earn it. He's always going to be very good. He has a pretty high luck rate. And since I married him off the Frenzy, he'll have access to a few offensive skills and defensive skills. Give him Aegis, Pavis, Astro, Luna, Vantage. He won't have access to Arm Strike, which I always find pretty good. Or you could just cheat in skills, like Infinite something. If we count supplemental material, he's also very good. He has access to quite a few different classes. He knows how to use magic. He is a sexy character, is kind of annoying at times, because Robin compares it to like a theater play, but it's also way more interesting. But if you do supports for pretty much any other character, you find him annoying at first, despite the fact that his skill, if you pair him up with her father, his backstory for some cases can be conflicting, because if you do a Wayne and like say pair him up with Robin, it's like, oh, my father took an arrow from me and he died, but Robin becomes Grima in the future, so how does that make sense? But overall, I still like his character. If we count supplemental material, it becomes Odin. He's not a very good Dark Mage, but he is a very good Swordmaster in that game. Severa. Severa is another character who where is she? Could easily go into S tier. Being the daughter of Cordelia, she has very balanced stats, very good skills. She'll have access to Gale Force no matter if Cordelia passes it down. She's another character who can make another combo. Nosferatu, Vantage, Wrath, and Vengeance. So she's always going to be very good. Her personality, though, does put her below pretty much everyone else in S tier. Because she's a tsundere, while most people are kind of into that thing, or they are okay with it. Her personality does tick me off from time to time, because she's a character who obviously comes off as abrasive. Because, well, imagine growing up under the mother who's classified as perfect all the way. I feel like people would have an inferiority complex to that, too. I don't care who you are. He's like, oh, you wouldn't have an inferiority complex. If everyone's comparing you to your mother, who is always said to be perfect, I'm pretty sure you would have an inferiority complex. Dude, I'm rambling at this point. Good character overall. Her chapter is annoying as all heck, though. Because you have to make sure she doesn't like get knocked out, and you have to save her at the end of the day. If you have to go to the right side of the map to make sure she does not get knocked out by all the millions of like promoted classes out there gunning for her, trying to stop her from getting to the person she needs to save. So you need to build a team that's both defensive and offensively powerful in order to save her, or you can do what I do and just have a bunch of rescue stats and constantly teleport her back to make sure she does not die. Overall, I still enjoy her character even though she does care for anyone she supports with. Her initial personality trait that can be a little grating at times. And Yarn B tier. He's a coward at heart, but he has a legit A tier. He's a coward at heart, but he has a reason why. If you're the last of your species because in the future Pan dies, or Pane, you would definitely be afraid of everything in the world too and try to survive as long as possible. Being a Togwell, obviously fast and defensive, in a sense, they're more skilled and evasive taking, whereas Maniketes I feel like, are more offensive and defensive taking. And since I pair Penny up with Gaius most of the time, the Yarn actually comes out pretty skilled and pretty speedy. Not a whole lot of defense, but he definitely can do around it. He essentially lives up to his name. His chapter is very difficult in the way you have to go around to try and complete it because, obviously, well, you have to fight two armies in this case. And you can fight one army or you can fight two. If you want all the rewards, you gotta do both of them. So you would take out both armies, one being riders, one being generals. Take them all out and Yarn is with the generals. If you side with the generals, you have easy access to Yarn because you can just literally take Penny, walk up and like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you working with this team? You're gonna come with us, young man. And it's always funny. Yarn also has a very weird relationship with his father unit because he's always under the assumption that the father will probably cheat on his mother. I have no reason why he believes that. At least I can't remember because I haven't seen his support conversations in a long time. Because I keep restarting games and I want to do different builds and all that. And that's just a problem with me. But overall, I do think he's very good. If he was he does grow out of his character in a sense, but since Fire Emblem support systems technically work in a way where they would need to make billions or hundreds of different conversations depending on who you supported with, how long they talk with, yada yada yada. That would just take forever. So since he's a coward at heart, but I do like him. And he's personally one of my favorite child units. Alright, now we're moving on to the last of the spot pass characters. Emmerman, you get her whole story, you get her whole story in the first 10 chapters. She dies off, I believe, when you try to save her. It quote unquote dies because when you get access to her, again, it's a spot pass chapter and it's very difficult because she has the same stats she does when you protect her. When Lucina reveals her real gender. So you have to go out and protect her. She's going to be amazing. And she has brain damage. It's really sad and depressing because she has brain damage at this point. She can barely form sentences and barely talk to people. She gives off the life of an exile and goes on to live her own happy life if you don't marry her off to someone. And it's actually kind of happy and kind of sad because she's all this peace. She got it eventually, yeah, but at the cost of her memories, her family, and she doesn't get any supports with Crom or Lissa or any of her nieces or nephews or any of that. She was added in later. That's what ticks me off. She only has supports with the Robins and the child, female Morgan, which is depressing as all heck. And that's why, if they gave her supports with potential children or nieces, or just a Gen 1.5 or stuff like that, she would easily be an S. But because of that, she's gonna have to stick in A, and I feel like she should be right beside Crom. Because she set the goals that Crom eventually achieved, even though they're in different ways. Priam. Priam's okay. He's gonna say in B. He's a descendant of the Radiant Hero, but it doesn't say who he's a descendant of. It doesn't say if he's a descendant of Mist or Ike. He just claims he is. And when you fight him, he does have Ragnell, even though in the game it's obviously beaten up and broken looking. But he's a very good unit. He has access to pretty much every breaker's sword, with the exception of Bowbreaker, I believe. He has access to sword, lance, and axe. He has access to Luna and Soul. So you could probably make the case he's probably Mist descendant and not Ike's because Ike can do Ether. But since he has Soul and Luna, he can't do Ether. Or he can do Ether in a sense, but not truly it. Overall, he's okay. He can only talk to Robin, but if you have the DLC, he can talk to Walhart or Walmart. And they're going to try to see who's the strongest. But they constantly get interrupted, so he's unfortunately stopped every single time. It's basically up to you who decided to win. Yen Fei. Yenfei's another character. He's okay. His chapter is difficult. Do believe you need Seiri in order to talk to him, in order to recruit him. He comes from another timeline, even though you face him in your timeline. He comes from a different timeline where Seiri died instead, and thus he's like a ghost of a former self. He can only talk to Robin and Morgan, and I believe he could talk to Seiri in the DLC. I'm not even sure about that. But yeah, unfortunately, being a Spot Pass character, he can only talk to Robin. Which sucks because you think the Spot Pass characters like Aversa, Gangrel, Yenfei, Priya, Mohawk, they would all be able to talk to other people, but no, they only get access to Robin. Because Robin's special, Robin or male because they're a special little character who needs to support with everyone. But overall, he's fine. I have no problem with him. He's a sword master. He has pretty much the same access to classes as Seiri does. I believe with the exception of the Falconite classes. So he's alright. Alright. Now the Tale of Walhart. Now, if I had to change this, I would add two different Walharts. I would have American Walhart and Japanese Walhart. If we're talking American Walhart, he's F tier. He's worse than Gangrel in a sense. Because even though the personalities are pretty much the same, if you marry female Robin off to him, he is essentially the worst abusive parent in like all of time. My mom's a social worker. She would have a field day with someone like Walhart, who constantly threatens to kill Morgan. This sweet little pea. If he like fails at the most mediocre of things. Now, if we're talking about Japanese Walhart, I would say he'd be B tier. He'd be fine. Because essentially he's just Kratos in a sense. He's tough, he's abrasive, but he obviously cares for his kid. He doesn't want to kill them like they do in the American version, which is ridiculous. But yeah, since we only have, I'm assuming the American version, he's here. If there was two, Japanese Walhart would be in B tier because he is at least tolerable. He's fine, even though he should be dead, like most of the Spot Pass characters. But overall, yeah, since we're talking about American Walhart, he's in F tier. He's like the worst parent ever. Alright, so we have finally finished this tier list, finally, after like 2 weeks. So, in S tier, Muriel, Flavia, Pan, Gaius, Aversa, Henry, Lucina, Adult Tiki, Inigo, Owain, Female Morgan, and several in S tier. I think pretty much that, again, this is all my opinion. I've already explained it. There's some bias here and there for at least some characters I didn't explain all that well. Robins are in A tier mainly by default, and you could try to, you know, they have a set personality. If they were kind of like Byleth in a way, I feel like they would also be worse. My general opinion. But overall, they're fine. Crom, Emberman, obviously why they're in A tier. Overall good. Her character arc pushes Crom to become a better person in the future and lead Elise. Emerin, Longcoop, Cynthia, Virian, Olivia, Basilio, Cordelia, Jerome, Noir, Yarn. All kind of self-explanatory on the reason why I like them. If not, I have other videos saying why I like them so much. Going on, then we have B tier, Lissa, Sumia, Frederick, Na, Noe, Tharja, Libra, Cherche, Seiri, Laurent, Priam, Yenfei. All kind of self-explanatory. Not amazing, not the best. These two are on the higher tier because they get a bit more screen time, being Lissa and Frederick. Spot Pass characters are kind of always going to be near the bottom because they don't really have much of a narrative impact. In this case, Priam has no narrative impact whatsoever. He just says he's the Descendant, so that's why he's just got a B tier because he's just fine. The C tier characters I'm okay with. I don't hate them. I don't use them all that much, but they're not bad. And in this case, Morgan's just in C tier because I had never used him, so I had to kind of give a neutral opinion on him. Like, alright, he's fine. He's not bad, but he's not like the greatest either. Maribel, Brady, Sully, Stahl, Vague, Mel Morgan, Gregor, Anna, and Kajil. All perfectly viable units, all great characters. I just don't personally use them all that much, and they're all pretty good if you put time and effort into them. Or I'm going to go in that place. I'm going to go on the thought process that people don't have access to all the DLC, and they're just kind of doing this all in one go. Rickon, Donald, Callum, all, again, perfectly salvageable characters. I don't hate them in any way, I just don't personally use them all that much, and thus they require a bit too much effort, in my opinion, to get them going. Gangrel and Walhart. Gangrel is obviously a reason why he's an F tier, because he's a terrible, crappy human being who wants to start a war, apparently go against Walhart, but that's supplemental material because you have to do it afterwards, and he shouldn't be alive in the first place, and he still dies regardless in his ending, unless you bury him off to Robin. So he's a terrible human being who belongs in the bottom of the trash heap. This is American Walhart. American Walhart is in F tier because he's a terrible human being who, yeah, lives by the strength of men and all that, and wants to stop greed and to unify the world. But he goes about it like might makes right, yada yada, because he wants to follow Alm's kind of perspective, even though Alm didn't do that on purpose. And since he's a terrible human being, because of the way he treats Male Morgan, if it's in the American version. Japanese version, he's B tier. Japanese Walhart is B tier if I add it. Anyways, I have completed this tier list finally after like 2 weeks. This is my own personal opinion. I really don't typically hate any of these characters because I have used them all and I have made them all good. It's just that overall, I have certain characters I prefer, other characters I don't. So with that, everyone, my name is Omega Zero, and I will catch you guys later.